Hello Internet, Blue Asterism Solstice here, and today we are going to kind of answer a little bit towards our previous little bit of how well will this age? With a previous bit of almost like a trailer reaction. It's not quite a reaction, it's more of like a response, a theory crafting response regarding the lore, my suspicions, the things I'm taking note of, and the thoughts that are harboring in my brain. And a lot has been harboring since then, but even more so with the drop of the second trailer. And it started just sort of just going and going and going and going and going. And I gotta tell you, I did try making this video a few times now, and each time I would just kind of redo it because I realized I could be doing something better. But then the more recent time, like, I actually rendered the video, edited and everything, then I realized watching another lore video, oh yeah, they said this in the beginning, and I'm like, I hate that I didn't notice this sooner. But like there was a specific line in the narration bit that I realized this relates to everything, and for some reason I did not take any single note of it. It's just like, man, this would actually go really good. So yeah, this is gonna be a fun little topic. But for the most part, this video is going to be a little bit about thematic to Messmer himself. There isn't too much about Mikko that is new, per se, to really discuss. But instead, there is plenty to talk about for Messmer. Plenty more than what we discussed in like my previous video. Or even I've discussed with a lot of other people. Like, I was surprised the kinds of things that kind of occurred to me, and details I'm taking note of in this second trailer video. Mind you, this is currently the first one I'm at right here. The second one's just right here. But the thing I want to point some attention to, and better explaining my understanding of Messmer himself, begins here.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
Now, he questions if his mother would truly lordship sanction one who is bereft of light. Bereft of grace, without it. Without lightness. Now, that could mean a lot of things. It could be in referring to himself, like, we don't quite understand much about him off the top of our heads. He could be referring to Morgott in Landel, who is, the current king and guardian of basically Landel itself, the way to the Elden Ring, the path of the Tarnished. Or it could be in regards to us, the Tarnished. Oh, I sneezed. It could be in regarding to the Tarnished. We were stripped of our gold, of our grace, of basically the light of grace, the gold of grace, from our welcoming into the lands between. However, there was the welcoming of us back to pursue the waging of war to the lands and brandishing the Elden Ring. Us and Godfrey both were sent back. And this is an interesting take on that for the most part. But what's interesting is his disappointment about it. His questioning it. Almost like a malice, really. A doubt. And it gives us some sort of insight to his opinions as a character. But kind of better solidifies that kind of understanding to it.
Of the grace of gold shall all meet death in the embrace of Messmer's flame.
Come now, touch the withered arm.
Basically, those without the grace of gold should know death in the embrace of his flame, is what he was just saying. Which could, like, clue us in a little bit to what he's really doing here in the Land of Shadows. But there may be more to it than just that. Because, one, he's waging war. And it's like, what really provoked him into this war? And one thing that came into mind is the lack of maybe grace in the Land of Shadows. So he's just waging this unnecessary war that's probably unregarded, unaffecting the lands between, unaffecting America, whatever else. But what's also curious is what exactly do the people of the Land of Shadows really represent? And something we might be able to draw some conclusion to is what kind of entities exist in it. Like, we see these, like, weird omen-like figures. Like, they have the omen horns. Sorry, I have, like, a wee bit of, like, my allergies and whatever. Just absolutely flared up from the seasonal changes. It's, like, finally summer and just pollen is everywhere. But we also see they have this almost like a dirtier yellow, a sort of a saffron, I think it's called, like, coloration to their garments. But they have omen horns to them, which is a quite curious trait, and one we don't see too much anywhere in combination in the base game. Previously I mentioned there was, like, the omen feet, so it's basically 3 omen in a costume, a lion dancer costume. Now, on the Elden Ring Twitter, they actually kind of, like, leaked what, or not really leaked, but they kind of shared what could be, like, a boss or something. And it's like an omen, and they have, like, the 2 chakram weapons, suggesting what we're likely getting as, like, a weapon type. And something else about that is overall the weapon type and, like, the style of their pose is, it just gives me this impression that so far all the omens we're seeing are very more ceremonial like, which is very curious. It's like, why are they very ceremonial? Like, why are they out in the open? And that might mostly be because this is the land of shadows and not the lands between. In which case, what their presence means here is probably something very different from the lands between. In fact, if we look here, actually we get a good look at some of these like curtains, drapes, whatever you want to call them, being in that golden tinge. That's almost like a saffron tinge or whatever. It does give us like a good idea of like what these people might be more in a representation of, that they aren't so much like maybe they're probably not as much disgraced as much as they are celebrated here in the land of shadows. But there is honestly quite a bit to take in still. But whenever I see stuff like this included somewhere, it usually means this is like some kind of holy place. And of course we have the yellow lightning of after the assault of the dragons on Landau, which times out really well with my prediction of last video that Messmer's relationship in like relations to most of what's really going on for him here really kicked off like after the dragon communion really began, which means he might be able to cast lightning also. But let's talk about even further to Messmer himself, what he might be, what he might represent. Now, this definitely gives us a pretty good depiction here on its own. Something we've definitely seen is that he really earns his name as the Impaler. And he's definitely one who likes to wage war. And he also likes his fire. In fact, probably assume he, when the DLC actually comes, probably assume he is likely immune to fire. Like, if he's actually in any way related to, like, the Gelmir serpents, he's gonna be immune to fire. But, I'm not 100% convinced of that, actually, with certain details that I'm in the realizations of. But, this is actually a good shot also to mention that I do believe that the, Omens, these are those dancing ones I was talking about in the lion suit. I believe that, well, for starters, we see that they're definitely enemies of Messmer. They don't follow him in any way, shape, or form. In which case, they are definitely part of his quarry here. I stopped to actually kind of like consider what the Omens actually might represent in this place. Now, there's the idea that they represent somewhat to the Crucible, but what kind of had me curious, though, was what actually gave them originally the name Omen. And something that occurred to me is, why would they even resort to the name Omen if I was told that the Japanese translation for them is actually like something like abomination? Because an omen, I mean, it's like an abomination, but it's more like a sign, a bad sign. A sign of something you probably don't want. A bad omen. Like, why an omen specifically? Because it could be something very subtle, just like a goofy coloration in the sky, and like a cloudy puffiness. Maybe it represents smoke. and then you find out later down the line that your house is on fire. It's just a lot of curiosity as to why would they suggest this, as opposed to, say, freak or weirdo or malformation or just abomination itself. And something that occurred to me is that we don't know in which way the term omen itself originated in this discussion. I do think there is certain means at play in terms of translation from one thing to the other and then back. But I think it could be like a George R.R. Martin part of a detail, where it actually alludes to the fact that maybe they had some part of ceremony, and we've seen in the other trailer, the gameplay trailer, that they were holding the candle trees, and it made me think to myself, what if they were part of the message that the Erdtree would burn? That's a fun thought, ain't it? Because their blood, it ignites with flame. Blood flame, accursed blood. That Moog embraces and Morgott discriminates with hatred. So something I thought to myself was maybe Messmer was a little less tolerant of the idea of the message and well familiar with the concept. In which case, perhaps some of the conflict that exists here in the Land of Shadow is part of hey, this message exists. Hey, I disagree with you. Hey, I'm gonna attack you and burn you all. Something like that. And that is more so of a theory than a definite thing. Because, it's like, when does he actually stop? Did he actually stop? Did he win? I don't understand exactly where it's actually at yet. Like, some of that is from our perspective, the viewer, the player, viewing these trailers. It's inconclusive to that topic. We won't actually know where it's truly at until we really set foot and look around. And for that part, I'm very much looking forward to. But I think there is another kind of matter we can take a little more from, and to better explain what is the real nature that exists behind Messmer. And this is a topic that I kind of sort of jumped to myself, and at the very first the video footage here, to me it backed up my idea, but for whatever reason I absorbed none of their earlier narration.
Micula the Kind spoke of the beginning.
Now, this is one of those things that had me particularly thinking. This exact clip. This right here. I was like, this is something to do with America's origin. She was like retrieving some kind of golden thread from this. But what exactly is this? Under a good, careful observation, I thought to myself, Those look like the folds you'd see along the end seams of like clothing items, or maybe like blankets or something. Maybe like a hoodie. It has like the folds, just consistent many folds coming away from like an opening or from the end of a fabric. Reminds me just of that. In which case I was quite convinced this is some kind of article of clothing, but what?
The seduction and the betrayal.
But sound of that had me, and like looking at this, had me more sense of maybe something's being drawn from something slightly almost more fleshy-ish. Plus we see this like golden strand here, which America holds up like some kind of trophy a little bit. But I was seeing what other people were talking about. They were saying this looks like maybe like a belly. Like maybe like of a pregnant woman or something. Which is more interesting when you see this part, which for whatever reason I did not pay attention to this line at all. It did not just like click in my head at all when I was initially making this video. And I'm just like, the seduction and the betrayal. And then another sort of detail. Well, this detail first off came before that. People were noting that Messmer has a certain similarity in his posture as well as his complexion and also his proportions. To a specific entity in the game. And you can kind of see a little bit of what I'm really looking at. No, I swear I've seen like a better example of this, but yeah, the Godskins have a strange like bodily proportionality to them. Like his shoulders are somewhere like here and his arms reach out this far. But we know most of this is actually his attire. At least a fair portion of it is. And he's just like this really like broad guy. But if we pay like a careful attention to Messmer himself,
Truly lordship sanctioned.
he has like a similarity to it, really. I think it was right here where it stood out more. But you see his like arms are incredibly long, like he reaches down to his calves. And that's like really strange actually, because neither America nor Radagon share that kind of trait. Which means this would come from some other entity. Where like the bodily shape is a little more irregular. But besides that, he has like a more pale complexion to him, plus this snakes coming from him also, which come from his torso, by the way. They are physically parts of his torso. But yeah, people suggest that he shares a lot of similarities to the Godskins in a sense, where he's a little more broad, irregular, but almost more like the slim ones. Only he actually has like some of this snake stuff going on like the nobles have, except the nobles just have like the tails. So it was a lot of questions as to what was actually going on with him, but it was kind of a theory that maybe he was some form of descendant of the Gloam Eyed Queen. The fact that this is included in this and somehow just casually thrown in is surprising, because by all appearances this is some kind of godskin cloth. And maybe the Gloam Eyed Queen dead and her belly or something, and America retrieving like her rune or grace or something from her. But what's interesting is the seduction and the betrayal, which plays a huge part in what was my theory just before I realized that was a sentence in there. I believe that Messmer is actually a descendant of Radagon. He's got Radagon's red hair, but he's got much to do with the Gloam Eyed Queen. In which case, he was practically a bastard child. If you want to call it that. And that could actually have much part in some of what's going to become his storytelling element. What could be like maybe he had a realization, or maybe he had some kind of slip up and was removed of grace and tried to reclaim it some other way. There's all kinds of things that could suggest he was just moved down on the favoritism list for pretty big reasons. What exactly this reason is yet to be really told, but there is no shortage of potential as to what that could really mean. Especially when we see this here coming from the belly. Like, it could be it was stripped way early on even. He was maybe even like discriminated a little bit against for it. It could be he was left somewhat in the land of shadows to grow up, or in the shadows of the rest of his family. There is really much to be left to our imagination to the subject, but it does seem the most likeliest that he was some kind of child of the Gloam Eyed Queen and Radagon. Now, before someone suggests it, there's nothing saying that Radagon was only for the time of like the war with Caria, with Rayo Caria or whatever. There is nothing suggesting that was when he came in. There's only suggesting that his interests were for the Golden Order and that he is America. Besides that, his relationship is he married Queen Renala. He divorced her, and not only did he divorce her, he cleansed himself of his sins afterward at the pool by Muriel at Eastern Liurnia. I never actually remember the name of that place. But he used celestial dew to do it. his ease of doing something like that might even suggest that he's done it before, and probably even done it even worse. But there's this implication that he is America, that he and America can change between each other. The devs kind of suggested that also in like their cinematic trailers for Elden Ring itself, the base game. Like, I remember the first one, it was the two switching between each other while the Elden Ring was being smashed or repaired. I don't know which. I'm pretty sure it was smashed, because then there was like the crack in the shoulder and that. So it is very high implicative in that sense. However, like the idea that he was like away from her waging war with the Carians, well, maybe there was like stuff going on in the northeast or whatever Godfrey was doing, could be suggestive that they are separate entities, and while Radagon was spending time at Rhea Lucaria, he was like divested into knowledge. He was digesting so much and coming to the realization of the likeness between the knowledge of sorcery and that of his faith, as like the incantations of miracles and that. And in turn, he came up with his Golden Order fundamentalism. It's basically scholarness, like they're basically scholars but by a different name. The fundamentalists is basically the nature behind it, where it's like incantation nature of holy order, but it's more knowledge based, which is a very interesting topic of concept. And I really like that they actually included that, because I feel like that was like a thing they could have done in like previous games, but they just sort of didn't. But he was the founder of that, and according to his icon, that icon of Radagon or something like that, it's a talisman found in Rhea Lucaria just above the classroom with the red wolf of Radagon. It's just above that, and basically it suggests that he was kind of longing, sort of craving. He had this sense, this feeling that he was incomplete. And for that was a likelihood of like a driving force behind his character to sort of go back to Landell. Like, it seemed to me like he could have actually even remained there or been content with it if he hadn't felt incomplete. But the preceptors of Caria, they were actually familiar with his secrets and had to wear masks with like a basically his rune as like a seal in the front of it, as like a part of the trust that he is America. And it was like such a curious little detail. And it makes even more sense that he was able to give like a rune of rebirth to Renala in the form of like the amber egg. But let's talk about the real fun details and why I was so keen on the idea of this nature to Messmer and Radagon. So one, there's obviously the hair. Two, obviously Radagon has done similar ops before, where he basically marries his way in and ends a war. And three, his children are considered America's children. Any child he has had, be it Renala's, are for whatever reason considered direct descendants of Queen America. Which further conveys the idea that even if he had a child with the Gloam Eyed Queen, it would indeed be America's. In which case, Messmer, if he is the Gloam Eyed Queen's, he is America's child directly. There isn't much explanation, but some people would say
from which gold arose.
This further half conveys the idea that's of like what the developers did with that first ever cinematic trailer talking about Elden Ring, where it's like Radagon and America switching constantly while smashing that Elden Ring with the hammer. Like, the hair itself right here might suggest America. In fact, much of the attire also suggests America. But at the same time, some of the form could also suggest like Radagon. At the same time, like if you fought Radagon enough, you would see the likeness pretty well. And it could play a huge role as to why we don't hear too much to the topic of the Gloam Eyed Queen, and that could be that Radagon had a huge part of it, but at the same time it's part of America's glory. But supposedly it was a defeat by Malekith in some way. But it's very possible also that Malekith is more of a cover-up. But it would be along the lines that Radagon got hooked up in some way, shape, or form, however deep, with the Gloam Eyed Queen, betrayed her when she was at her weakest, and glory. A shameful glory, but nonetheless a glory. A very ugly glory. And a very gloom sky. That was something else a lot of people pointed out. And this isn't too clear as to what this really is. Some people think it's probably one of the trees and the opening between them. It could be like the gate between the two worlds, wherever it properly is. Who's to say? But to say that Radagon is America and Radagon seduced the Gloam Eyed Queen, betrayed her when the time was right, would also make Messmer part of his family, his lineage, and America's. Would mean basically anywhere the Godskins are found in the base game, mind you, is directly tied to Radagon's lineage. quite literally. Because Messmer, his armor is half based on back in Farum Azula. There is a set, the Drake Knight set or whatever, that is themed on it. It is almost spot on the same armor. There's very minor differences, one of which being actual horns and that of dragons and dragon wings used in part of it, as opposed to his snakes that have the dragon wings growing out of them and they're real wings. It is very likely he is like a huge role part of the Dragon Communion, and maybe he was too heavily partaken on it that he has become more war crazed, more bloodthirsty, more unsatiated in his lust for battle, sort of like Godfrey. But he didn't have no Sirach to try to instill dignity to his being. He wasn't as compelled to compose himself. So there is definitely a lot of things to consider when it comes to Messmer in that sense. And Dragon Communion also has a habit of making its followers recognize other people less as people and as you're just less kind to other people, really. It's turned a proud knight such as Eleonora into a great killer of other people who come across your way, as opposed to the drakes you once slew. In which case, that could be part of Messmer's story, and he could be part of a cautionary tale that Yura knows of. In which case, it very well could be that the Land of Reeds is in the Land of Shadows, and Yura was part of the tale to talk about it. One of the survivors to talk about it. Him and Eleonora both. So I do think we might actually get some Yura lore here. In fact, we might actually get some Okina lore. Because Okina was also practically a demon after blood by that point, as a nearly tarnished type warrior. And then he met Moog, which is a curious topic of its own. And he was begifted a sort of blade that would basically make him even more feared, more fearsome. There would be even more blood yet. And he would basically become a demon with it. And it really is debatable how linked that is, really. Like, only real due time will tell if the Land of Reeds is actually part of the Land of Shadows. But man, does it have me curious at this point. But then Messmer himself has ties to the Volcano Manor, to my knowledge. Like, first off, his cloak to him, his cape, it's like the same kind of like drapes you would see at the Volcano Manor, But there is actually a curious painting at the Volcano Manor. One that might suggest it might actually be him. And that is of a Erdtree official of sorts. It's of the official attire, but it's with like a mask and a red cloth around it. Sort of like a cloak or veil or something to their mantle. As well as like one eye covered. And that very eye that's covered is actually Messmer's eye that's covered. If you haven't actually had a very good look at Messmer up close, only this eye is open. This eye is closed. In the painting, it's that same eye. And then this side would have like an open hole. For a while, people used to look at that painting and think to themselves, oh, that's likely Rykard or something, right? But it's looking increasingly more likely to be Messmer. And his snake symbology also tends to link to that of the Volcano Manor itself, because of the importance of snakes to the Volcano Manor, with the Great Serpent there. We don't actually know what the Great Serpent is specifically, but it's supposed to be like immortal or something. So there's little quite understood there. And it's hard to say if Messmer was part of the greed, the lust for power that was with that. So that is like its own other topic. There's honestly so much that we see just from his physical appearance and what he can do. And we can already suggest that he was part of the War of Giants. Like, we see these like giant impaling like structures to the giants. They have a lot of likeness to his spear. Only they're like almost more wooden, like much thicker, and then they spread out more like a proper tree, sort of. If only slightly. Which could be that before he really tarnished himself or something, he had more approved like mannerisms to his being, where he was more likeness to the grace of gold, where they didn't have as much conflictions about him. Like, that very well could be a thing. In fact, I could see that being a thing. But his victories maybe just made him want more and more and more battle or something, is what I was kind of thinking. And it also adds up if you take into consideration the duelists and Colosseums. Like, if you recall, the Colosseums, they were actually closed for a while, mostly because they weren't really set up yet in the game. But while they were closed, phantoms and things were suggesting that it was closed for a different reason. That, like, the art just kind of grew kind of like tired and disapproved of by the grace given. So you can kind of see where a lot of this really does fit in describing Messmer in many different kinds of lights, and what could be the real backstory behind him. Like, it probably started off as, oh wow, look at this guy. And then it was probably turning into, Can you believe this guy? I can see a lot of that kind of taking shape. And it's really interesting and worth quite a few topics of conversations, if you ask me. Although, it is curious if there is any other like signs in the middle of the base game that says anything further, because the duelists are themed after him in terms of their attire. Like if you compare their attire to his, it's almost exact. Like the red duelists that are like putrid with rot, they also have like snakes on them, and the snakes, like, they'll pick you up and the snakes like bite you before they throw you, and it'll actually like inflict something on you. I can't remember if it was actually like poison and if it was rot. I'm pretty sure it was rot though. Well, it very well could be poison, like the strong poison, like the kind you would get from like that sword that you get from the Volcano Manor's quests. I'm pretty sure it's like something like that. But yeah, I could honestly just keep going about this, but it really just sells itself once it starts for me. And I just love to talk about it, really. I know I'm probably missing quite a bit. But I hope you've enjoyed me going on an excited, dumb kind of rant almost about Messmer. Like I said, there's so much to take in about this guy. And even more so than Miquella at this time being. And the possibilities are pretty interesting. But it's like, once you apply the Radagon to Gloam Eyed Queen topic, it just settles in a very natural and even more interesting way that it makes you want to look into it even harder. Because you do kind of almost see like the Radagon in him, but it also looks a little bit different. But yeah, it definitely has made me even like more excited to like explore into when the DLC comes out. Yeah, thanks again so much if you indeed have listened to all this, or even have like something you want to say about it. But until next time, this is Blue Aspen Solstice, and you have yourselves a great day. Bye bye.